some things that the group did, the two groups did slightly out of order, so sometimes I will talk about them slightly out of order for the sake of talking about like one location and one chunk. We'll talk about what one group did there, another group did there. Both groups end up getting their fortune told, the fortunes of Ravenloft, by Madame Ava. She has them draw 5 cards in a certain pattern, and this is how like a tarot card reading would work in real life. The different positions are meant to indicate a certain symbology that the cards relate. Madame Ava, Prime learns a little bit about her because they go and visit her in the epilogue, and she tells them a little bit more about herself. Madame Ava is the reason that this campaign happens. There is a paragraph in her character description that is not referenced anywhere else in the game that says, by the way, King Barov had an illegitimate child with a Vistani woman. This half-Vistani Madame Ava, who was then called Katarina, came to Castle Ravenloft to meet her half-brother Strahd and worked secretly as a maid in the castles. When everything fell apart, she felt her chance at reuniting with her family lost forever. She could not forgive Strahd for what he had done, but felt like she had a blood tie to him and to this land. She, as many Vistani women do, had the power of foresight and vowed to use this ability to do whatever she could to save Barovia. She made a pact with the goddess Mother Night. There are 2 gods in Barovia. Your group, both groups, really only ever talked to people about one of them, the Morning Lord. The other one worshipped by the werewolves, by Baba Lysaga, by the creatures of the night, is Mother Night, who has evil aspects to her, but also aspects of solitude and of reverie. Mother Night agrees to this deal and grants Madame Ava immortality in exchange for her youth. She was a young woman when she took on the countenance that you see here and has existed in this form for 400 years, luring people into Barovia in the hopes that one day, combined with her power of foresight, they could fix the curse upon the land. The first card that she had you draw tells you where the Tome of Strahd is in the campaign world. This is a handout that I'm given in Curse of Strahd, so it is a story written by Strahd of his tragic past, his perspective on it, but it is kind of insightful in the way that he talks about like his reasons for why he did what he did, and he like kind of recognizes some of how shitty it was. There's nothing else in the campaign like written into the book that ever says that you can definitively learn any of this anywhere else. Certainly, I was going to play it that Strahd would not bring up any of these subjects on his own. Only if you knew about it already and confronted him about it would he be willing to then talk about it with you. So this is something that is good to get a little earlier if possible to give you guys some perspective on the campaign. And we're going to talk about why I had to change a couple of things to make that happen. The second item that she draws a card for, this card gives you the location of the Sun Sword within Barovia. This is a sword, it's a little hard to see here because it's all just light. This is a lightsaber. This is an anti-Strahd lightsaber. If you hit him with it, it's radiant damage. It cancels his 20 regeneration. And if he is within the sunlight that it exudes, if he has turned to 0 hit points, he does not turn to mist and flee to his coffin. He is simply destroyed. This is a weapon for killing vampires. It was the sword wielded by his brother Sergei, who is a paladin in life and retains a fragment of Sergei's murdered soul. After Sergei's death, Strahd ordered a wizard who worked for him to destroy this blade and believed that order to be carried out until he saw it for the first time wielded by a character in your campaign and realized this thing had returned 400 years later to kill him. An interesting note, this sword can communicate with its wielder telepathically, and it fears Strahd as much as he fears it. It can experience fear and knows that if in the next fight that it has with Strahd is not destroyed, that the sword will be destroyed. It is fully aware of its own stakes in this. And
wait, it communicates telepathically, but like through kind of feeling, right?
It empathically.
Yeah.
So it cannot speak to you, but every time a character was holding this sword in Strahd's presence, I told that character that they were afraid.
I was obviously afraid.
And
Strahd was in the
probably
room.
that didn't necessarily occur to you that it was an external influence leading in. The third card that you draw. Oh yeah, I was supposed to have dramatically revealed that.
Yeah.
The third card that you draw is for the holy symbol of Ravenkind, which is only attunable by a cleric or a paladin.
Well,
If your party has neither a cleric nor a paladin, it might incentivize you to make friends with a cleric or a paladin in the course of your adventure. And then you can use this. I nerfed this item to hell because as it is written, it is absolutely barbaric. It creates an area of sunlight, which does all the stuff that the sword would do, and I thought they're already going to have a sword. Let the sword do its sword thing. It's a sun sword. Let it have the sunlight. This item already is going to paralyze all vampires in the area, so Strahd or the Spawn, who fail a save, and it has 10 charges per day.
What is it? It's like a standard action?
It's,
to
a,
just,
it's
like,
an
throw-
action to activate it, and every
Yeah.
vampire within 30 feet has to do a save or be paralyzed. And I thought, let's make this a little more useful, actually. I'm not going to say just vampires, because you have some very critical fights with vampire spawn, but let's just say it affects all undead, which had some consequences that I didn't consider until later in the final fight with Prime, and I'm very sorry about that, Carter. And let's reduce that number of charges to 3 to make it just a little easier to manage. Because also originally it was like it has 10 charges and it refreshes like 1d6 plus 4 of them every day. And I'm like, this is actually going to seem really trivial whenever you're using a charge, and I don't particularly want that. I think it's
What
supposed to
is
be strong.
What is this? What is Ravenkind? Like what is this a holy symbol of?
Oh, of the Raven Queen.
Oh.
Yeah.
So why would it create sunlight?
Because undead don't like it.
Yeah, but that seems silly.
Yeah, well, it's an anti-undead weapon made
Yeah.
by the Raven Queen for her followers to
Yeah.
wield into battle.
Yeah.
The fourth card is determining what NPC in Barovia is your fated ally in this campaign. This character I will give plot armor to, and they get a specific ability when they are in the presence of Strahd. They can, as a bonus action, inspire somebody in the party, which is inspiration mechanically in 5th edition. You can spend it to re-roll something, and they're just like you're not gonna have to work as hard for them to be helpful to you. A lot of them have written like conditions in there that say like you have to do a little quest for them, or you have to use a certain tactic to get them to come with you. But once they are in, they are in. And you're not going to have to worry about them flaking out on you. They are here to support you. There are a lot of different options for
there's
this.
only one correct one.
Yes, and nobody got it.
Well, certainly one quite useful one.
But we will start with what I call the A-team tier. These guys are the cream of the crop. These are the best of the best. If you draw this character, you have a really significant workhorse going for you. Maybe they regenerate damage. Maybe they can't truly be killed. Maybe they are immune to physical damage that is not magical or silver. Maybe they are a higher ranking person within the Vistani who would otherwise be an enemy of yours, and a dangerous one at that. Maybe they know a lot about the dark secrets in the Amber Temple. Maybe they are vampire hunters well practiced in their trade. Maybe they are a flesh golem who is actually way more intelligent and way more emotionally capable than even her creator realizes.
Fuck!
What?
Oh dear.
Fuck you, Alan.
Or maybe they're a total dickhead.
Get this guy out of here.
Who has access to surprisingly powerful magic and has absolutely no conscience.
Screw him. No.
And has a sociopathic desire to leave Barovia by any means possible. And if you can convince him to work with you on that effort, we'll do everything that he can.
And he also
It's
won't
the-
be your
it's the-
friend.
The guy that was
This
Victor.
is
This is
Victor Velakovich,
Yeah.
the son of the burgomaster, who played a much more important role in one campaign than in the other.
Dick. Mr. P.
Yes.
In both campaigns, he was a tremendous dickhead.
Yes.
And nobody's fated ally. What could have been?
Are we gonna get to learn who some of these people are?
Yeah.
That we don't know.
Yes, we
Okay.
will talk about
Okay.
each of these people as we
Just
go
making
forward.
sure.
There's another tier down, which is, okay, why not? These people,
Are you kidding me?
Like they could do something. They have some hit points. They can get some stuff done. Ismark has decent armor class and hit points.
Were very helpful.
Irina
Yeah.
has really low hit points and is not super combat capable, but she wields tremendous influence with Strahd, potentially.
Mhm.
Davian Marnikov is plugged into a secret society that knows almost everything that's going on in Barovia. Donovich is the priest from Barovia
Right.
Village. Who is
Priest would be fine,
is
yeah.
a cleric.
Yeah, he's a oh, we should have gotten
Oh,
this
we
guy.
got
He
we
is
got
that.
this one.
I mean, we got.
Are you kidding me?
We left
And-
him behind with
Alex-
a kid.
And
No.
there's
No.
this guy who has a violin, and you have to like do a little quest to convince him to work with you. He has
Who the
barely
fuck
any
is
hit
that?
points.
Adam Sandler.
And also, who the fuck is he? Why would you necessarily meet him unless you were specifically sent to find him? Importantly, and it may not be obvious from looking at him, this is like one of the nicest guys in Barovia. He's just like a really chill dude
Yeah.
who is like just a really good person in a way. Most other people in this campaign have a lot more baggage going on, and is just a genuinely inspiring presence if you happen to be his friend. This is Cloven
Am I just-
Bellevue from the Abbey of Saint Marnikov.
Am I noticing
Crest.
now just that he has a bare foot?
Yeah.
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 I did
And
miss
a
that.
lobster claw.
And a lobster claw. And
Yeah. He's
so
got one
that's-
barefoot, and then like his other one seems like he like some kind of animal foot.
What?
Yeah, he's got like a
Oh,
big.
really good.
No,
lock
fuck
on
you.
I'm in love with you. on this one.
Get it?
Sparky.
Because it's there.
And there's one other possible companion that I would put in this tier, and we'll talk about them a little more as we get. Raise your hands if you immediately formed an intense emotional connection to this character.
Yeah.
Is it negative emotion? Does that
Yeah, I'll also raise my. Yeah, I agree with Julia.
I was skeptical, but always be nice to the creepy.
First, but
Yeah.
then you liked him.
Yeah.
But it's very much in the vein of always be nice to the creepy things because
Yeah.
it's safer that way.
My character loved everything creepy.
You know what? That would really, really describe how we played this game. Always be nice to the creepy things. Yeah.
Much safer that
There's a
way.
policy. And then there's what I would call the fan art tier, which is characters who do not have official art, and I had to find art of them that fan art that people make on the internet. So one of these is my personal favorite, Sir Klutz Tripolotsky. Fuck you. Then there's Stella Voctor, which one group met, and the
Whoa.
other.
that girl?
We kept trying to meet her.
Never
The
did.
other
Girl.
That's what she looks
Don't-
like.
We,
like
we just
Carmela
didn't
Sobrano.
get
I imagine more cat.
into the boxers enough.
Yeah.
We were
so much
busy.
time
Yeah.
trying to help her.
And then this one was spoiled for Sparky, and he asked me in consternation about it after the campaign. Arabelle, the little Vistani girl, who
Oh.
has one hit point.
How could she help you?
She is the basically the princess of the Vistani camp south of Vallaki, and wields extreme influence with her father, the chieftain, with Aragal, her uncle, and has numerous mystic powers that she could, for example, perform a card reading if you had somehow missed every other way to do that. And she also has a number of ways of doing devastating curses to people. And if they ever succeeded on their saving throw, she would be immediately killed by the damage that she would take as backlash. So I'm not sure they thought through when they gave her all these
One.
powers. She has one hit point, which is not the lowest number of hit points that a fated companion can have. That would go to this guy.
What?
This
Is
is
already done.
This is Nikolai Voctor. I would understand if Alpha
yeah.
didn't remember meeting Nikolai Voctor.
No, we
Do you
did,
know
yeah.
who I'm talking about?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
dead in the bed.
He's dead.
He's dead.
We
Oh yeah, Lady
we
Doctor
covered it
talked
up
about
very
her dead
nicely.
husband.
If you happen to start talking to people about Nikolai Voctor, they would say, that was a really great guy. He was a really good dude. He was an excellent leader. You know, he was never the burgomaster of Loki because that wasn't in his heritage, but everybody liked him. Since his death, Lady Fiona's really gone off the deep end. She was kind of okay before then,
Oh,
but thankfully
no.
his sons take after him. If only we had someone like that leading Vallaki.
What the fuck?
If only someone were willing to find a way, possibly because a card told them he was really important, to bring him back from the dead,
Oh my god.
he would be
Forgetting she's here.
the best. He would be the.
Dog.
That's horrifying. He would be the best possible burgomaster for Vallaki and yield various dividends.
I'm really reeling over this Stella Voctor art.
We
I
found
really-
it's a pretty good burger master.
Burgomaster. And then, of course, there's Periwimple. So then there's... And then there's S tier. And nobody got this guy.
Yeah.
Is he the guy who landed on our cart on the thing?
He's
Is that
party
crazy wizard who tried to kill us?
encountered this guy at some point. But he wasn't anybody's favorite ally, and nobody made it their really aggressive duty to hunt him down.
Well, they left, didn't they?
And then there's the F tier, which is what Alpha got. The worst possible option. You draw a card that says you do not get a fated ally.
That makes sense.
But then we ended up getting...
Every friend you made, you had to earn
Oh my
on the way,
goodness.
or convince Luke to join your campaign. But nothing would give you, and no one would get those juicy mechanical abilities to inspire you when Strahd is nearby.
Oh yeah, no, I was about to say, I don't remember
Definitely
anyone
down hands.
ever inspiring any of
Nope,
us.
never
How
happened.
could that be an obstacle?
This is
Bullshit.
that
Just to fuck
bullshit.
people, just to get them. The final card reveals Strahd's location. All the options are chambers within Castle Ravenloft. It is guaranteed that if you go to this location with the intention of this being your final encounter with Strahd, that it will happen there. This gives you the opportunity to know the time and place of your final battle and try to prepare for it, and just kind of use that as tactical information. Perhaps a little more meaningful when this was a module that was mostly just the castle, but I
Yeah.
think was still important for giving some kind of groundwork for how to control that final thing. So really quickly, going through what people drew. So for Prime, we got the result that the Tome of Strahd would be in a fortress inside a fortress, in a place hidden behind fire. The Sun Sword would be in a nest of ravens.
What?
Holy
Well,
symbol
that's easy.
of raven
Yeah.
kind
It was a while.
would be in a fallen house guarded by a great stone dragon at the highest peak of that house. That Strahd's enemy would be a fallen paladin of a fallen order of knights, lingering like a ghost in a dead dragon's lair. This would be, many years later, Carter's character.
Oh.
Strahd's location, a secret place, a vault of temptation hidden behind a woman of great beauty. A tower of treasure is where evil waits. For Alpha, the Tome of Strahd is with the dead under mountains of gold coins. The Sun Sword is with a faceless god at the end of a long and winding road deep in the mountains. The holy symbol of Ravenkind is in a dark room full of bottles, the tomb of a guild member. Strahd's enemy, the Dark Lord, worst of all truths, must face the evil of this land
She did say
alone.
that.
He did say that.
We got
And
that. We were like,
curiously-
yeah, whatever.
That seems pretty clear. And just like you're going to tell us bad shit is going to happen. Yeah. And it also might get mixed in a little bit because Alpha also drew the wild card for the next category. The wild card for the location is that Madame Ava says, I don't know. I got the mists. They obscure this location. This card gives a couple options. One is it says, the Dungeon Master can choose a room of their choosing. Wherever you would like this to happen, you can do it. I was like, that's too much responsibility. It's too early in the campaign. But when you think about this, I want to think about it. Instead, I'm going to take the second option, which is Madame Ava says, maybe come back in a couple of days. We'll try again.
We did not.
The
We
party
did.
would eventually get another reading, but not from Madame Eva. And it would eventually give them the answer to this question.
I wanted. Are we gonna go back? Are we gonna like start talking about everything that we did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
This gives me a campaign map where we can see that different parties are going to be going to different locations in the game. They're going to have different places that are important for them. We can see that we have a number collected around Castle Ravenloft, which is appropriate. But there's something that happened is that both groups got the Tome of Strahd in Castle Ravenloft, which I saw being an endgame location. I wanted them to have the Tome of Strahd earlier than that. So I did some work to make that happen the way I wanted to. I'll talk about that when we get there. I was going to bring you guys back to your progressive chronological thing by coming back to the village of Barovia and talking about that a little bit. Alpha gets to the village of Barovia. They just wander in here, fresh out of the mist. They got this letter from the burgomaster of this village saying, come help us. And they say, okay, well, let's look around. All right, there's a woman crying, and there's a general store. We're never going to check out either of those at any point. We
Well, specifically, Daniel like ran around town because he's like super fast monk, and he comes back and he's like, "There's a woman like crying in a building." I'm like, and moving on.
There's a mysterious woman selling pastries, and somebody will talk to her for a little bit. There are all these abandoned houses. Maybe we'll spend some time poking around in a couple of those, see what's going on. And there's a tavern, and of course we'll poke our heads in there. The prime group, on the other hand, they hear a woman crying, and they see these abandoned homes, and they go, "We're never checking those out." Never.
Well, that was a woman crying is really scary.
Oh, I see. All right.
Definitely don't interact with that at all.
But there is a general store. We'll very briefly poke our heads in there, and there is a pastry seller. We'll go talk to her, and there's a tavern. We'll end up there at some point. So
I don't think we
Prime
intended to tell us.
Prime explores the town. What was it?
I don't think we intended to talk to the pastry seller. Cinder just bought a pastry.
It required, you know, she did not approach you guys. It was you guys kind of taking an opportunity
Did she
to
eat
go
the pastry?
initiate that conversation. So you guys really quickly stuck your head in the general store, and you kind of learned.
You think, Kayla?
You kind of learned some that things are more expensive in Barovia, and the guy you talked to wasn't very nice, and he called over his shoulder briefly to his nephew, who was moving boxes in the back, and I described him as being very big and kind of having a Adobe expression. So this is Perry Rumpel,
Oh my god.
who, if he's your fated ally, and you tell him you want to go to Castle Ravenloft, he goes, "No, that's scary." But then if you tell him that Irina Kolyana is in danger, he goes, "Oh, she's pretty, I'll help you." He has the stats of a gladiator. He has over 100 hit points. He has 3 attacks. Each of them does 2d8 damage
What the
plus
fuck?
a strength modifier.
What kind of riz does Irina have? Oh my god.
So we never heard from him again.
The blood spirit.
We approached the pastry seller. So
Come on, you didn't show us this art.
I did show him.
Before
But it
we
was
ate
Cinder.
the pastries.
I made sure
I
to
can't
show
really
everybody
see
the
it.
art as soon as possible.
Oh, I see.
Nix is running around as glad as she kind of gets free from her group at some point and is wandering around town around like, "I'm an old lady, I can go wherever I want." And she runs into this old lady who's like, "Hello, fellow old lady. Can I interest you in a pastry?" And Nix kind of goes, "Oh, okay." And she buys one and puts it in her pocket.
Yep.
And it'll
Holds
stay
on to
there
it.
for a very long
Yeah.
time. But it will come out eventually.
We had also we had really rapidly given up the idea of actually taking these people to jail.
Yeah.
We were just kind of like, there's bigger things going on.
Actually realizes that they are lost. Another chapter in here is that they do explore these abandoned homes. I don't remember if I have another slide for this later on, so I'll talk about it now. In one of them, there's just a bunch of people standing in an empty room, facing the wall, and they go, "Okay."
Yeah.
In another one, there's just swarms of rats crawling around, and they go, "Okay, that's great." They find one that doesn't have anything super spooky going on. They decide to spend a night there. They find a chest that has some treasures in it. It has a silver short sword. It has a cloak of protection. It has a bloody, torn outfit of a servant. You guys never explored any abandoned homes, but you chose those. And there's a letter on this servant from the burgomaster of Barovia Village that is almost identical to the one that guy gave them, except instead of saying, "Come help us," he's saying, "For the love of God, whatever you do, do not come to Barovia. Seal us in and do not allow anybody to come in here." And it looks like somebody found this letter, possibly in the pocket of whoever's bloody clothes these are, and rewrote it in a different, they checked the handwriting is different, and instead said, "Come to Barovia. Please help us. Come here as fast as you can."
And we said, uh-oh.
That's really good. I really like that.
Yeah. Sparky at some point was like, because you guys found this letter.
Yes,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Why does this say second letter?" Or like, "Why does this say the real letter?" Why is that the name of this handout? And I was like, "Oh, how about that?" The prime group approaches this woman, and she offers them a pastry. She's clearly been selling them to people who live in these homes who seem very desperate to get their hands on one. Cinder decides to be adventurous. What do you recall about this experience? Do you want me to go, or do you want to talk about it?
I mean, I remember tripping balls.
Cinder tries the pastry.
Uh-oh.
And it's absolutely phenomenal. Not just in the sense that it tastes good, which it does, but Cinder strays out of thought and time and drifts into a vision of her life where everything is exactly how she would want it to be. All of her friends are around her all the time. She's always going on adventures and discovering new things, learning new things. She is content. She is supported. She is happy. After a couple of rounds of seeing Cinder standing there slack-jawed, her party kind of poke her, and it wakes her up, which is good, because she failed her save, she would have been there for 8 hours. Otherwise, just standing in place and drooling, and this is what the people of Barovia village are addicted to, and are willing to trade something that they should not to this woman in order to be able to afford them.
Long pig.
Both groups stuck their head into the tavern, which is owned by these three Vistani women.
And
This is
They
also
were so rude.
Nick said, yes, can I have an alcohol?
Yeah, and then like, Nick says, "I'm an old woman, give me," and they gave her some wine, and she was like, "Oh."
Did not know what to do with it.
These three would have like tried to ask probing questions about the party, like, "Hey, where are you from? Like, what's going on?" Because they totally work for Strahd, they're spies for him, and want to know everything about you.
I remember them being particularly forward with their probing questions, and I was like, this is no, we're not doing this.
Yeah. You may remember an experience with the bartender here of him being extremely vacant and standoffish, because he is the first of many Barovians who you will meet who has this kind of vacant sort of thing about him, where it seems like he's not really all there, and he's just foreshadowing that. The townhouse that nobody went into, with a crying woman, is inhabited by this woman who is called Mad Mary by the campaign. She is beside herself, totally oblivious to all else in her grief as she sits and clutches this doll to her chest. Her teenage daughter Gertruda has vanished.
Why?
She believes that Gertruda has been kidnapped by Strahd, the devil. She will not dare to speak Strahd's name. She simply calls him the devil and says that she believes her daughter has been taken to the castle. And perhaps if you had talked to her at this early stage, you might have felt some urgency to go to the castle to see if Gertruda could be saved. If you had asked her about the doll that she was holding, she would have said, "Oh, this is Gertruda's doll, but I actually had it when I was a young child growing up. It has a tag on it from the person who manufactured it, and the tag says, is no fun. It's no Blinsky."
Hey, did you ever print off those labels?
I did not. I could try to do that right now. Okay. We have some bottles of wine that we intended to put the Mardukov official labels on. That's a detail that got away from us, but probably before the evening goes on too late, I will say that we have wine hanging up in there. It's all red wine of varying qualities, as the Mardukov wine is supposed to be. And we have sparkling wine in the fridge, patterned after their Champagne du Stomp, which is their sparkling wine that they describe in the book.
And we have sort of a Barovian-esque honey cake also.
Wait, and it's pretty delicious.
Go for it.
I've got 3 different types of red wine. One kind of...
It's honey cake.
And then one
Cream cheese, sour cream and whipping cream.
Yep.
And sugar.
Just the wine, please.
There's one more location in Barovia Village that did not appear on your maps and I did not talk about because it's an optional location. We began this campaign at level 3. If instead you wanted to begin this campaign at level 1, they put in a mini dungeon called the Death House.
I've heard so much people talking about the Death House, and I've been like, what the fuck
because
is this?
so many
I
people...
thought that was just Castle Ravenloft. And people
No, this is a back of the book appendix dungeon that says if your group is new and you want a tutorial for the edition for them, if they're not super up on it, and if they want extra content, you run this dungeon first. Wherever they are in any world, they go into this house, they complete the dungeon, and when they walk back out, they find themselves not where they began, but in Barovia, and begin the campaign from there. It's a fine little dungeon and module, and absolutely somebody could still run it if they want. I don't see really any reason to talk about it here. It doesn't super connect to the story of Curse of Strahd. It does have a number of treasures that you can get from it, and seeing as I didn't want to give you guys free magic items or anything like that, my compromise to myself was I will make a list of all the things of value you could find in the Death House, and to make sure that your party encounters those early in the campaign, possibly in a chest in an abandoned house in the village, or possibly in a chest given to you by Madame Eva, depending on which group you were.
I like that cloak of protection. I like that. That's good shit.
Both of your characters, because most of the things in Barovia Village will funnel you to this. Everybody goes to the old Burgomaster's mansion. Everybody meets Ismark and Irina. Everybody forms a favorable opinion of them, hearing their plight, that Irina is being stalked by Strahd, that their father died of a heart attack because their house was harassed by his minions during the night. They want to bury their father in the local cemetery and then go to Vallaki because they've heard it is a fortified town where perhaps Irina will be safe from Strahd's attentions. Everybody agrees to join them on this quest. Action and Daniel, totally, immediately, obviously, both have a crush on Irina. And if we were to go back and look at their art again, we would see that Daniel is a tall, handsome elf, and Action is I think like a 5'6" guy with alopecia.
Yeah.
But I made it a point, I was going to make it a point every time in the campaign that one of them was with Irina, she would ask them imploringly what was going on with the other character. But then, of course, George left the game early, so it ended up just being Action. That every time she saw Action, she would go, "Oh, where's Daniel? How is he? Is he okay?" And I don't know if you ever caught into that, but I really
Oh, I was suffering. I frequently suffer in silence. It's fine. That's not true.
We go to the church in Barovia Village. We meet Father Donovich here. Father Donovich is suffering because for a year his son has been beneath the floorboards of his church. A son who went to Castle Ravenloft to try to overthrow Strahd and came back something inhuman, something with an insufferable thirst. And you hear his cries eternally from under the floorboard, "Father,
No.
I'm starving." This has been driving Donovich mad. He cannot bear him. He cannot bear to imagine killing his son. But he cannot continue existing like this. Universally, your party said, "Yikes." And instead of having a tutorial fight against one vampire spawn in a basement with all of you ganging up on him, one who is desperately starving and diminished and actually just wants to escape, doesn't want to kill you, just wants to run out into the woods. Instead of doing that, we leave him chained beneath the floorboards and move on to other things. You never meet Doru, and as Alpha discovered in their epilogue, Donovich eventually gives in to his son's pleas, lets him loose from the cellar, and gives Doru the meal that he's been longing for a year. And so we move along. In Alpha, it's at about this time, as we are leaving Barovia Village, that Nyx casts a spell she hasn't cast before, Find Familiar. And she says, "I summon a Raven Familiar." And I say, "Cool, that is true." But something that you learn at this point in your campaign is that not all magic works in Barovia the way you would expect. So instead of a Raven Familiar exactly, we get this. Which we immediately named Dr. Wiggles.
So his name's Dr. Wiggles because he's in need of a doctor, and the worms inside of him wiggle.
Yeah. And he is Nyx's constant companion through the rest of the game.
And he goes,
Yeah.
Never
And every so often, like when they were talking about him or he was in the scene, I'd say, "Dr. Wiggles says," and I had a lot of fun with that. We, in defense of the grave ceremony, or on the road, both parties fight some combination of wolves, dire wolves, and Strahd zombies. These zombies have a stat block, particularly in the book Curse of Strahd. They have way more hit points than regular zombies, and they have a mechanic where if you do enough damage with like certain kinds of physical weapons, their head or arms or legs might pop off and continue to be animate and might try to kick you or grab you or claw you or bite you, and I decided they would have to be independently killed because I think that's more fun. Normally they're just supposed to fall still when you defeat the base creature, but this was more Looney Tunes, so I went with that.
I don't think we ever hit the zombies. I think we just...
You had only this one fight with them at the very beginning and then never again. So it was like the very first combat, and it was years and years ago, so I understand. Alpha encountered them a few more times in various contexts. You see a procession during the night of spirits from the graveyard of Barovia Cemetery going up the long and winding road to Castle Ravenloft. You are told at some point that these specters are the ghosts of those who, over the years, have tried to overthrow Strahd and perhaps they were buried in the cemetery, or perhaps their souls began here and eventually ventured forth to the castle. Their numbers have ballooned as of 1 year ago, when a particularly intense revolution was led against Strahd, which failed. Doru was a part of this. Other characters died en masse, and it's part of why the town at this point in time is so desolate. It has lost many of the people who were there. Alpha, at this point, leaving Barovia Village, stops by the Sarapul encampment. Prime has already been here. This is where they started their campaign. The Vistani lead them here. They come from here to Barovia Village, so we're getting out of sequence a little bit. But just your encounters that you have here, you meet the Vistani, and there's a chance to learn quite a bit of information from the Vistani, and some of it is basic stuff like the exposition that I just said, particularly that this rebellion a year ago was led by a powerful wizard who came through the mists and seemed confident that he could take on Strahd, and they fought in the skies, flying lightning bolts, fireballs, blasting. Strahd, you learn, is a wizard as well. They're having a wizard fight in the skies that ended when that strange wizard was cast down over Sayre Falls and has not been seen since, and Strahd's forces decimated whoever remained of that rebellious effort. They also tell you that ravens are a good luck omen and can definitely be trusted. And they're saying sincerely what they believe, and they are telling the truth.
We
Though
did not believe
you
that.
Nice try.
easily understand why you might not. Part of the reason you may not trust the Vistani totally.
Julie has something to say.
Can I rewind to one funny thing in Barovia Village, which is that Ismark didn't trust Lucian for a really, really, really long time, because when they met, Lucian thought that since their dad had just died, that he must come back as a zombie or a vampire really soon. So Lucian refused to help bury him. He wanted to burn the body, and they had a big argument about it. And so Lucian had to spend a lot of time repairing that friendship.
We had to work hard for our friendships, I'm now learning.
We also had at least several of us, before we encountered any Vistani, people told us, at least someone told us, yeah, that Vistani worked for Strahd.
The Barovians do not trust the Vistani, Ismark included. And
Yeah.
Ismark seems like a pretty up-and-cut guy, and certainly, if you talked with him about this in the tavern, he would have been looking at those three Vistani who run that tavern, and he knows that they are spies for Strahd from them, because he doesn't really know too many other Vistani. He has drawn a conclusion about all Vistani.
So several of us did not go into the Vistani camp
Yeah.
because we were like, why would we tell the bad guy where we are and where we're going? And then,
Oh,
and
we
then-
definitely know the point where like
And
he
we
knows where we are
started
at any
there.
time.
Yeah, and then,
Several
well,
of us immediately partied with
yeah,
them.
several of them, we're gonna go party with them. I'm like, okay, fucking whatever. If you die, you die, I guess.
We partied with them at every opportunity.
Well, that sounds fun.
Lucian trades clothes with them. He dresses entirely in Vistani clothes,
Yeah.
which it becomes an interesting detail.
It turns out to be pretty important.
I also will talk briefly about the third Strahd campaign that I ran. So my sister came to me and said, I have this book club, and it's kind of getting
it's
a little
that.
stale. And what if you came in and ran some Dungeons & Dragons for my friends? I have played a little bit of Dungeons & Dragons with you, but none of them have ever played it before. Would you do this for us? And I said, sure, I don't have time to write new content, so what if I ran you some content from this game that I'm already really familiar with, because I've been running it for 2 groups. I come in and their party is a bard, a paladin, a druid, and a druid. One of them is a dark-haired mystical woman named Esmeralda.
Oh.
And one of them is a rogue who collects teeth. And I give them the adventuring hook, werewolves in the mist, something like that. Wherever you are, we think werewolves have been kidnapping children. Follow their tracks and get these children back. They follow the tracks through these mists. They come into a land that they are not familiar with and realize that they're not in Kansas anymore. They're in Barovia. They go around, they do some spooky shit in Barovia Village. They have some spooky visions along the trail. They come here and meet the Vistani, and the Vistani say, they say, hey, can we we don't have any gear. We've learned we need silver weapons to fight werewolves. Do you guys have any silver weapons? And the Vistani say, we could, maybe, sure, maybe we do. Would you trade us anything for them? And Michelle's best friend says, we could trade sex. And half the party immediately jumps in on this, say, yeah, we'll whore ourselves out for gear. The other half were very horrified by that. People were pretty tipsy at that point. One of these girls, when we were trying to tell her what D&D was, she said, is it like a somebody said, it's like a video game. And she said, I played Mario Kart once. Is it kind of like that? So there's a spectrum of responses to this. But they partied with the Vistani. And the rogue who collects teeth was horrified that she was offered less money to do dental work for the Vistani than her companions were offered for sex. But I thought it was in character for the Vistani to do that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Their campaign did not last very long. But we'll share.
But it felt like they had fun while they were doing it.
Yeah. I think it was pretty good. Somebody had a baby shortly thereafter, and that kind of ended things forever.
Was it about 9 months after visiting the Vistani?
A reason you may not have trusted the Vistanis, you might have noticed that given what a hellscape Barovia is, they're extremely comfortable here. They're playing loud music and they're dancing around a fire. It just kind of seems strange, maybe, if you've been seeing horrific things.
No, I agree.
Untrustworthy.
If they would have been the second things we saw in Barovia, yeah, probably. Because you're having fun. That's literally impossible.
Yeah. And then this other guy was
your art
they
is in
work
color.
for the vampire. And we said,
Okay,
oh, well,
But that's the first
that's a
people I
problem.
ever interacted with, and they seemed very nice because they met the nicest possible Vistani at first.
In Barovia Village, my sister's group found some, like, they're like, what do you look for? I'm like, you find an old woman. Like, they're knocking on random houses. You find an old woman. And they're like, asking general questions. They ask about the Vistani. And this old woman is like, the Vistani, they're all thieves. And they all work with, they have the evil eye. And they put curses on people. And some people in the group are like, so this is kind of like fucked up, right? This is like literally just gypsy stereotypes. Like, we're actually not having fun with this. And I'm like, this is what my character believes. This is my personal perspective on the Vistani. And they go, oh, okay. And would that I could for every character that I run in Dungeons and Dragons feel comfortable inserting something like that.
These views do not represent the views of the Dungeon Master or
or associated trademarks.
But although that's like another thing, like we first meet the Vistani and they're just super nice to us. They just give us great food and party with us, and then we go meet some more Vistani and they're super
they
nice to us. They
accidentally
give us all this
parted us into
treasure.
this hellscape.
Like they immediately gave us that cloak of protection and silver short sword. And we're just like, these guys are the best. And then we go into Barovia and we meet Barovians, and we're like, oh, you guys are the worst. And the Barovians are like, you can't trust the Vistani. We're like, oh, okay. Go back to your meat drugs, I guess.
But something that even Prime notices before they finish their time with the Vistani here is that the shadows of the Vistani do not move in sync with their corporeal bodies, which is a detail that is not in the book Curse of Strahd, but Christopher Perkins calls out every time that they encounter Vistani in his game.
Did we know that?
You noticed this as well. Yeah.
I do not remember
That was when
Yeah,
we
it was
left the party.
like at the end of the party.
it was like the shadows
of the
being
fire.
cast from them
And then we
in
were
the
like,
flames.
time to go home.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was more important in Christopher Perkins' game where one of the player characters found out that he himself was a Vistani and didn't know it, and that, in fact, his shadow and its malevolent agency might come into play during that campaign. So, moving on from that, there are a few things that I will tell you about the Vistani that nobody ever learned. It never came up because the Vistani, in fact, do have dark powers that they learned and passed along hereditarily. They vastly predate Strahd. They have nothing to do with Barovia in particular. They just have the power to leverage their evil eye and to curse those who wrong them. They had a pretty low DC because they just have like NPC stats, they're not particularly good. They can cast Charm Person, they cast Animal Friendship, they can do Hold Person just by like looking at people. But if you succeed your save, that Vistani is blinded for a round. They can also curse you, and they can choose what level of curse they want to do. They can do really bad shit to you, like permanently blind you, or make you just like unable to tie your shoelaces. Like this is a specific thing, right? Whenever you try to do your shoelaces, you just look like an idiot, just like forever for the rest of your life. But if you succeed this save or remove this curse at a later date, the Vistani who tried to put it on you takes a bunch of psychic damage. Wow. So it's not something they dish out willingly.
Are those curses removed by remove curse?
Yeah. Which is a problem. Because that's a low level
Did
spell.
any of us ever?
This never came up with anybody.
Okay.
I always was looking at these. Esmeralda fully should have had these abilities, and I was like, this is just too much.
We did a really good
Esmeralda
job
was
of
too
interacting
pure.
with
Okay.
Vistani.
Bless her.
The best thing that they could do is make somebody vulnerable to a specific type of damage, which means when you curse them, they take twice as much damage from that impact. And when Esmeralda courageously sacrifices herself in Christopher Perkins' campaign, dying in one-on-one combat with Strahd. As her final act, she curses him to be vulnerable to piercing damage, and it's extremely impactful.
Okay, I'm really glad it doesn't.
Yeah.
This is where I was supposed to say all those things about Madame Eva that I already did.
Is she? I mean, this is obvious. I guess is she the good one that the earlier, older Vistani outside of Barovia trusted?
Yes, she is. She is the one who has been masterminding all the efforts of the Vistani who are in on this with her to try to. Because Strahd also wants this. He wants the Vistani to bring in people from other worlds, and she is saying, yes, do that, but bring them to my camp before you let them go anywhere else. She does a reading for every party that comes to Barovia, and from there has to kind of wash her hands of it and say, do what you're going to do. I can't really help you past that point.